Welcome to Crypto Talk Radio, the podcast for everyday investors like you. Visit us on the web at cryptotalkradio.net. And now, here's your host, Leicester.
Thank you for that, Bailey, and welcome everybody out there in Crypto Talk Radio, found at cryptotalkradio.net. A new day, a new era. Cryptocurrency is on a rise and on a run, an amazing run, but still, it's a new day. The elections are over. The results came in. Anybody paying attention, and I'm not talking about to pollsters who didn't know what they were talking about. I'm talking about to the common sense that was out there from independent media sources, myself included at cryptotalk.fm, where we did tell you that chances are, people I would put multiple impassioned pleas for people to, vote with the brain, not with their heart, because I felt that this was the opportunity that we were looking for to make a difference in the economy. The economy is what we need to focus on. And that's what I saw in the run after the election's result was an economic rush optimism, not the chain, just general optimism about and around. Did not seem to take place worldwide. It seemed to be largely the United States. That's not a bad thing, but I was expecting more from the international shores. I thought that international seemed like they were not as, obviously there was a positive, but not as positive as I'd hoped. You had chatterings from international circles about the potential of ending the wars that are going on. Some that are talking about backing down and talking peace and changes in immigrations and all these different things that I thought were going to create a more positive push than what we saw. And you might think I'm crazy for making such a statement, right? Because it's like, 70,000 goes up to over 80, close to 90. You're still not satisfied. The answer is no. I'm not, because I thought Ethereum, right? Ethereum had a run, and I'll be talking about it, but I'm still disappointed in where Ethereum landed and the fact that, right now we're kind of calming down. There's going to be some profit taking, but I felt that Ethereum should have gone higher than it did. And even now I'm struggling to understand why Ethereum maintains this low level velocity that it didn't get anywhere close to what I would hope that it should have by now. And that tells me I'm probably on the right track when I speculated that idiot Vitalik has pissed off a lot of whales who dumped out of it and don't plan to come back. It's all theory. I'm tinfoiling, but I can't think of any other reason, because there should have been an amazing rush up on Ethereum after Bitcoin's run. We're talking $20,000 in appreciative price for Bitcoin, and yet Ethereum can't get anywhere close to its all-time high of $4,800. How can that be unless there's other mitigating factors causing suppression of the price? And I've said I'm focused on Ethereum more than all the rest of them, because if you think about the tried and true one, the one that's always been there, the one where all the projects are, it's still Ethereum at the end of the day. So you have the traders out there, they're trying to make the money and they're going to Bitcoin and then they're shifting to the different alts. But you also have those people who are really big on the DApps and the smart contracts and the development side of things. And although things have been spinning up, Ton Chain and, Solana for sure, and Sui and all these, you still have Ethereum in the room and has not gone anywhere. And it's the most trusted. It's the most time honored. And I felt that we should have more of a run on that one by now and have not done. So I'll be chatting about that one. I also am going to be chatting about a couple of things with the election and the correlation of some of the statements made. And then I'm going to wrap up this episode. This will be a special episode where I'm going to answer some questions that came in about our coverage on the Saitama fiasco. And then I've got an update for you about another set of coverages I'm going to be doing here in the near future. So stay tuned for all that good stuff. Coindesk.com, we are going to zoom out to the month chart, and we are going to start with Bitcoin this time simply because it's appropriate to do so. Bitcoin's the one that had the amazing run. The numbers that I'm going to be giving are for 24 hours, but I'm going to go back a little bit because it started obviously fresh off the election. Over the last 24 hours, a low of 85,000, a high of just $5 short of the 90,000 mark. Currently sitting at the 88,000 mark, trending in a slight upward direction. The run-up that we saw happened pretty much immediately after Trump was called out as the president-elect. He has not been fully elected. The electors have not done their thing yet. Until that happens, he is not officially the president, but he is president-elect. Anybody that remembers when Trump lost in 2020 and Joe Biden was calling himself the president-elect. He set up his own little booth and all this stuff. And, the fight was, no, he's the president-elect, but he's not yet the president. That's where Trump is now. He's the president-elect. He's not yet the president. They're still doing transitions. Trump is selecting people for his staff. I thought he's made some good choices so far. There's a couple of controversial ones, but I think he's putting the right people in the right place for the right reasons. Meanwhile, on the other side, the Democrats are pushing to cram through judges that'll help block the president to be and stymie his progress. The downside, of course, is that it's going to be hard for them to get those judges confirmed and through, especially if the Republicans that are still in the Senate fight back against what's happening. Trump has a finite period of time in order to make all this happen. So we have to wait and see what happens over the next month or so leading into Christmas. But Bitcoin had an amazing run after he got nominated, saying, yes, he's going to be the president. It was as low as trending downward. So that was the, buy the rumor, sell the news kind of playing in. Went as low as just about 66, 67,000 bucks, and then started climbing day over day over day, 70,000, 75, 80,000, 85. And then we finally got some taper off as people started to take some profits. I did say, I believe there was going to be some profit taking happening because there were people that were sitting on bags at points and they were just waiting to make enough profit off of what they had to sell out. We also saw that there were some institutionals that were actively trying to purchase more. If you bought into the ETFs, you're looking at some very positive numbers on the ETF side. And I felt that the ETFs were the safest bet if you held on to them from when they first launched at the lowest price point possible. And I think mine was 30 something bucks per, and now it's high as $70 per. I mean, that's a great gain. Some people might balk at it, but why? You're talking the safest way to invest in the cryptocurrency without the risk. Somebody else is certainly holding it. Somebody else certainly owns it, but you're benefiting from those gains as these transactions happen. And with this kind of a run up, it was very difficult for people to justify investing in Bitcoin, knowing that you wouldn't make very much money over the profit. Because if it ran up from 60 to 100 bucks, okay, 40%, you're not going to make significant amounts off that unless you tossed significant in there. Like if you tossed $10,000, then yeah, that's a pretty good amount of money. But if you had $10,000 to throw away, you probably would look at that as chump change, right? But on the ETF side, you could toss a good $1,000 at it and you're going to make a pretty good amount of money because that ratio is significant because it's based on the volume of Bitcoin that's sitting in those pots. Same with the Ethereum ETFs. But as I said, the Ethereum side, I was very disappointed to see that the performance on Ethereum was nowhere close to what I would have expected that I saw on the other tokens. Certainly it had a run up after Trump was selected and pitched a shutout against Kamala Harris, essentially climbs. It was as low as I want to say 2,300, which is really, dude, 2,300, 24, climbs to 25, 27.5, 3,000, peaks over about $3,400. But again, you're only talking about $1,000 jump on something whose all-time high was $4,800 and didn't seem to even scratch the surface of its all-time high, despite Bitcoin essentially getting, let's round it up, it was close to $30,000 in gain, and yet Ethereum can't get $3,000 in gain. You know what I'm saying? It didn't feel like Ethereum was able to climb to the same degree that Bitcoin did, and there's no logical reason why that was not the case, and I was disappointed to see it because Ethereum is the one that I've got my eye on, and the market cap for Ethereum seemed to be in a little bit of jeopardy. It's just shy of $400 billion. That's nothing to shake a stick at, but if you think about some of the other ones that are climbing with 50 billions and 70 billions and 100 billions, it's possible that Ethereum has absorbed some of these other whales that now went over to these other projects to buy into those after what Idiot Vitalik did and pissed them off. That's possible. I don't really know for sure. All I'm saying is I'm still optimistic, perhaps naively, that Ethereum is going to have the run that it should get based on this price appreciation that we see of Bitcoin. We should definitely be able to get to the all-time high. We should definitely be exceeding the all-time high. If I'm honest, Ethereum should be somewhere in the $6,000 range per by now. There's no reason for it not to be, and I'm extremely disappointed to see that it was not. And I don't know what it's going to take for it to get there. Hopefully it does. I'm crossed fingers that it will. But then you look at some of the other ones. Let's look at Doge, for example. Doge, there was a point where it went all the way down to 8 cents. Just recently, with what's happened with the election, climbed past that 8 cents, shot all the way back up, got close to 50 cents from an 8 cents. That's the kind of climb I was expecting from Ethereum that I did not see, almost a 10x, very close to a 10x. It didn't happen on the Ethereum side, but it's happening on something like Doge. And with Doge, it's a different situation because Elon Musk talked about the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, which caused some of the pumps. Elon's been associated to Doge, so there's no real substance to it. I'm saying that I was optimistic. If anything was going to run, it should be Ethereum simply because of longevity, the fact it's been around very much more. A lot of the other garbage tokens then didn't run nearly as much as I thought they should have. The Donald Trump tokens didn't run nearly as much as I thought they should. There was a run. I made a couple $1,000s on a couple of garbage of oil coins on the Trump side, but none of them sustained, and all of them seemed to crap out. Didn't last as much as I thought. Some of the other garbage, Pepe's another one, didn't run back up like much as I thought it should. That's Ethereum. Pepe it ran, but not what I thought it should. That's Ethereum. But even the Solana ones, most of the Solana ones didn't run the way I thought that they should. The ones I see running are garbage Ton ones. Ton is garbage. Let me just tell you this. I'm going to rant for a second. The whole Ton chain is absolute crap. The reason it's absolute crap, they don't support, and somebody will come at me and say, yes, they do. I have checked 3 different dApps. They do not support Wallet Connect. If you don't support Wallet Connect, you're as Bush League outlaw mud show as it gets. Wallet Connect is the standard. No, I'm not using Telescam in order to trade some freaking tokens. I refuse. Even Richard Hart's garbage doesn't force you to use some sketchy bullshit in order to trade the tokens. I'm not doing that. Ton is absolute crap, and I was disappointed to see that because there was a couple I was going to try to put in a little bit of money and just watch the price, but I'm not going to use Telescam, and none of the wallets that they support do I own or will I own. If you don't support the Wallet Connect standard, it's sketchy business ready to get you ripped off. If you're a gambler that want to roll the dice, that's up to you. I will not be doing it. End of my rant. Now, big picture cryptocurrency. A lot of these mainstream fiat banking, etc. organizations took notice of this popularity spike that we saw fresh off the heels of Donald Trump winning the election. And let me just clarify, for some of the naysayers I saw on YouTube of exactly what you just saw in the situation, the reason that cryptocurrency is ripping as hard as it is directly because Donald Trump pitched a shutout against Kamala Harris. If Kamala Harris had won, cryptocurrency would not have ran anywhere hard like we see now. It might have run about a couple $1,000s, but it would not have run anywhere near what it's doing. And the run that it would have done under Kamala would have crapped out after she would have announced that she's going to extend Gary Gensler for another 2 years, and he announced more lockdowns. That's the reality of what we would have been dealing with, because that's what Kamala said. She called it criminal currency. She's on quote saying that. So Donald Trump going in office is a reason we see some of the positive sentiment. But the positive sentiment largely feels like the United States. It doesn't feel like international has picked up on it yet. I don't know if that's because they're not sure if it's fake, but why? There's all sorts of opportunity on this one. All I know is that certain of the tokens that I saw run up during the international hours, I'm seeing major dumps. Okay, usually it's the inverse. Usually it's the United States that's dumping off after international pumps it up like crazy. And we're not seeing anywhere near as many Binance listings that we normally saw. But some of these fiat organizations chimed in. JP Morgan, who's associated with Chase, chimed in talking about euros. They, way back, so this is like a day after Donald Trump gets in, announced that they were going to enable euro-dollar conversions on its own blockchain. If you didn't know, JP Morgan has its own chain that they developed using its own coin. It's a tokenized asset, as it's referred to, JPM coin, that they've already been using to process transactions using what they refer to as Connexus is the name of the blockchain. This is going to allow them to do euro-dollar conversions. Now, you have to ask yourself the question, how is it that JP Morgan can do this simple something using enabling euro-dollar conversions using its own blockchain that it controls, so it controls the ledger, it controls all the pieces and parts and the technology of it, to do euro-dollar conversions, yet we don't have any sort of United States bank that's designed to get on board with something like this to facilitate those transactions for conversions for fiat into cryptocurrency and vice versa. Why is it that we can see this on the international shores, but not on the U.S. shores? These banks, that's why I call them ignorant, because think about it. If they had jumped on board before what happened just recently with Donald Trump pitching a shutout against Kamala Harris, they could have capitalized on the greatest possible run of cryptocurrency that you can imagine, especially if they wanted to entice more business, more customers to transact with their bank. But they're not leveraging that opportunity because of why? Fear of Gary Gensler, who's going to come out and say that's the law and then sue them and do all this other nonsense, which is why I say that if Kamala Harris had won, we would not be seeing the runs that we are seeing, despite this whole narrative that the Democrats passed the ETFs. That was done under duress, not because they desired to do so, because they were forced to do so for pressure. That's the truth of what happened. Reality is that the banks are just stupid and they're behind the times. Remember, it took the banks 10 years longer than the rest of the world to embrace chips in cards. It took banks 20 years longer to embrace the idea that we no longer need to imprint names on cards, and in many cases that contributes to fraud because they can simply dust your card and get your name and your number and your expiration date. It took banks ages to move away from the swipe that we used to do with the magnetic strip because that's how you could easily breach the data that was on the card. Our U.S. banking system simply is behind the times. It always has been. The tinfoil theory is that they're doing that on purpose, slowing the wheels of progress. They don't want to go too fast. They want to be able to keep up with what's happening so they can control it. Whether that's what's happening or not, I can't say. I do know Jerome Powell said he ain't leaving. So we have to see what Donald Trump does when he comes into office around the banking system, because, of course, Donald Trump's most notable quote, "I like the dollar." We have to put that to the test, see what it is. Regardless, JP Morgan is one of the very first that's actually working towards facilitating swaps between fiat and cryptocurrency using blockchain technology that it controls rather than leveraging some of the blockchain that some of the sketchy business out there like Dogechain. MakerDAO. MakerDAO is probably the most dysfunctional DAO I can think of in the space. I've been trying to think of other ones, and I can't think of other ones that, obviously Cult DAO, but you know what I'm talking, not garbage ones. I'm talking legit ones, but this is the most dysfunctional that I can think of, because MakerDAO, I did an episode and I gave them kudos. I gave them praise and I said, there's something here. I think it's interesting and appealing, and I think it's worth looking at. My disappointment was they refused to serve people in the United States. So I didn't take a further look. Then I hear that there's going to be this rebrand to Sky. And I said, I don't know what the hell you guys are thinking doing such a thing, but whatever. And apparently the community agreed with Leicester at CryptoTalk.fm, and it was pushback and flack where they were going to back off of it because the community didn't want to do it. And they wanted to keep the DAI token, because this is all around the DAI token and the concerns that they were going to lose value in what they held. Recently, there was more messaging that came out that said, actually, what we're going to do is we're not going to do that. We're going to back off. We'll continue with the MakerDAO rebrand to Sky after what's going on, because we allay the concerns. Because the reason that there was a pushback is the theory or the belief or the presumption of centralization, increased centralization, that the vote to do the rebrand to Sky was largely controlled and managed by a very slim set of, I think it was like 4 people, hold roughly 80% of the strength of the vote, which I've called out multiple times is a flaw of almost every DAO system out there, including Luna Classic. The idea that it's not just what it should be, which I say is one wallet, one vote. They don't do that. Instead, it's how much token you have, and that contributes to the strength of your vote. Well, how's that any different than what we currently have in the electoral college system or something else? It's skewed towards the wealthy in this case. And that was the concern here, is that these wealthy folks, they're just influencing it, they're steering it, and the rest of the public doesn't want it. We don't want this, but we don't really have a voice because we don't have the same tokens as these 4. And no DAO wants the smoke to simply transition to a one wallet, one vote system. You might say, well, you can have 50 wallets. Sure. It doesn't really matter, because if you have 50 wallets that you vote yay, and you're going against 10,000 wallets voting nay, you're going to lose. That's the point. One wallet, one vote gives you a better angle about what the public desires. Largely the reason they don't do that is because a lot of the people, they're outside the crypto bubble. They're not online all the time. They don't know that there's a DAO vote out there. They're not notified that it's out there. They're expected to be following Telescam or some other garbage. If these were to act like a business and actually use email and contact people, reach out via text, reach out via email, reach out via mainstream forms of communication, to get the word out that the Dow vote's there and then give enough time for people to come in and place their vote. Then it might be a better situation for the one wallet, one vote strategy, but they don't want to do that. They want you to go to Telescam and stay on Telescam and leave it running all the time so your phone can get breached, which is why a lot of people don't do it and they don't know about it. That's what happened with the whole, like the Ben V2 where he said, Bencoin's dead, guys, because people didn't know. They didn't know that this had happened. It was on Ben's live stream, which makes the assumption that people are going to his live all the time. Some people simply don't go to the lives all the time. There's only so much time in the day. So you need to go to your JOB. That's in 8 hours. You should be sleeping 8 hours. Right there, that's 16. You got to deal with your kid. You got to feed yourself. You got personal matters to deal with, bills to pay, and your own self-enrichment. Most people don't have time to sit on Telescam or sit on YouTube streams or anything else. That's the nice thing about a podcast. You can simply take it on the go, and while you're running on that treadmill, pop on your headphones and listen to Leicester at CryptoTalk.fm as he talks you through some of these paradigms and hopefully makes you laugh a little bit. But these YouTubers, they don't get it. I understand. So this DAO situation, I see it's a simple solution. Anybody that contradicts what I'm proposing, I want the smoke. You can hit me up, but I believe one wallet, one vote solves problems like this to where you don't have these kind of mutinies going on where they're trying to do a rebrand and the community simply doesn't want it. They don't understand what's wrong with the current one. And as I said, anything that's done a V2 craps in the long term. MakerDAO, do I think it craps? No. I think it's a terrible rebrand. That's my personal opinion, but I don't think it craps. I think it's fine, but it highlights the flaws of DAOs. DAOs sound good, and it came from a bygone era of this notion that you have a voice. You do, but there's a lot of limitations to that voice, and we have to understand what that really means. Now, as I close out my episode, I got some follow-up questions to our coverage we did on Saitama, and I thought about doing a dedicated episode, but I figured, let me just isolate this to the weekly because some people may not have heard our coverage that we did. It's all on YouTube if you want to follow it along. It's also on the podcast in the past, in the history. So if you didn't get a chance to check those out, I do recommend it, even if you weren't in Saitama. Because it's not just for people in Saitama. It's an educational walkthrough about the things to look out for, red flags about these sketchy freaking projects out there. And it's interesting. It's a lot, right? There's close to 5 hours of content in that set. So it's a lot, and I understand that. But I think if you have the time, it's worth listening to it to kind of embrace and hear for things that are red flags. So if you're following projects, you can listen for some of these things to watch out for as you're looking for projects to get into, especially now when we have these run-ups. You're going to hear a lot of these patterns that I've described in the sketchiness of the cryptocurrency business that you can use to keep yourself safe. If you're a gambler, I can't do anything. It's your money, right? But I do recommend checking it out. In the meantime, I wanted to follow up with these questions with some answers to what I heard to close out the episode. And I'm not attacking anybody, but I am going to have to call out some people because it is what it is. I'm going to be doing a dedicated episode separate for Lily Finance, Brad Beatty, and I'll do a separate episode for Terrarium with the doctors simply because I think it's kind of a self-imposed obligation that I do these things. Meanwhile, enjoy the questions. Thank you. Enjoy the run-up. This is a fun time. Be careful, though, but it's a fun time. It's a time for money. It's a time for profit. Trust me, the best is yet to come. The first question, and I love the question, by the way, but the first question was around, this, how was it that we got to the point that this was so unseen? It wasn't unseen, right? It was seen, but the cult was strong with Saitama. The cult was powerful, and the cult was born from the FOMO that was driven by the fake pumps that the team was doing, right? This is the danger of FOMO-based tokens. There's just unreasonable climbs. That's what was happening at the later points. But also just, you see, holder counts are going up like unreasonable. It doesn't make any sense. It's not like they're really drumming up those people. They're just faking it. Most don't climb beyond like maybe 6,000, 10,000, 15,000, at a stretch over a couple of months. When you start seeing that you're in the 100,000 range, and it's only been a couple of months, you got to ask yourself, that's a little bit sketchy. So that's number one. Just it was not unseen. We didn't know what they were doing. We knew that something wasn't right. Various people called out that we knew something wasn't right. We didn't know what it was. And as I've said, just because it's a scam doesn't mean you can't make money. Just because you make money doesn't make it not a scam. As in, there was nothing we could see that stopped you from buying and selling it. There was nothing we could see that stopped you from making money. You just had to game the tax system because there's a tax on it in order to support the reflections. But other than that, there was profit to be made. People made money. It's not like you didn't. But it's, I don't want to say illicit funds, but it was questionable in the process by which they were allowing you to do that. So it was not unseen. It was just, we couldn't say why it was happening. Nobody could prove why it was happening. It wasn't until a couple of people called out, I was one of them, Rodney was one of them, Skywalker was one of them. There was various people that were calling out what appeared to be weird things, money movements on the wallet side that didn't make any sense. But because they were hiding all this in a private telescam channel in terms of why these were happening, nobody could prove it. It's just we had to connect the dots. And it turned out that was the case. It's just we couldn't prove it. So it's not that it was unseen, and I want to stress simply that we couldn't say what exactly was going on under the hood. Nobody could except the insider. The question too was around Christina, right? So she comes out on that, subcult deal, and I had the same question. Well, why wasn't she on the case? I think she should have been on the case. I can't prove why she wasn't, unless, and this is a theory, it's possible that she was one of the ones that dropped the dime, or she was the primary one that produced the evidence. Remember that on the subcult video, she called out that he lied about his education. We know that to be the truth. She said that they were bankrupt before they got into this business, and all of a sudden they're doing Lambos and Mama's new whip and the land. The reason that I think she still should have been part of the case, and maybe she was one of the individual one or two, but I don't think so. But the reason I think she should have been named in the case is she had to know where, if you were bankrupt before this, if you were broke, and now all of a sudden this money's flowing in. She was online talking about the project, so she knew what was going on with the project at the front. She said she thought it was a scam. She didn't say she definitively could prove it, but she said she thought it was a scam. Okay, if you knew that much, why didn't you go to the feds before you go to that subcult? Like, there was so much sketchiness around her behaviors, but I wouldn't put it past her to have been one of the ones to go to the feds after they had their falling out. Like, it might have been that because she's a woman scorned, she decided to go and drop the dime. Well, if that's the case, and I don't know if it was, but if that was the case, maybe she was in the private telescam channel. Maybe she was there when Cult Leader was chatting on that channel and she saw some of that stuff and she captured it off the side. I don't know, but I just found it very suspect. She was not named in the case myself. I don't know the reason why she wasn't. I felt like she should have, to be fair, because she had to know that the money flow was coming, and she was involved with the project early on. So I have the same questions, but I don't have any answers. Another question about Faltron and why I called him out. I called him out primarily because he's denying something that there's visual evidence of. We don't know why the visual evidence is there. I'm simply calling out the visual evidence, which is that he has a selfie online. He's not denied it's him, so I can assume it must be him. The photo matches his official Twitter X account, so I know it's the same guy. This photo is a selfie of himself in a mirror, and he's wearing what appears to be a Shaman King Emu jacket. My question is, okay, this is now attached to a telescam channel that says Shaman King Emu, which implies, and it says Business Development Manager, which implies that you were part of this and that you held that title. He says that's not my channel, none of which denies what I'm asking, which is, were you associated with Shaman King? He says, I wasn't part of the dev team. That's not what I asked, right? So there's a way that people lie by not answering the direct question, right? The question is, were you involved like Business Development Manager for Shaman King Emu? If you were, that would explain why there's a telescam channel by which that name that has your photo. So then when you say that you didn't create that channel, he says somebody else took his likeness. He used the word likeness. The other way that people lie is they make up large words when they don't need to, because it's a Chewbacca. They're trying to distract you from the real truth of what's happened. Chances are, because you see where there's smoke, there's fire, chances are he got that jacket with the logo, right? Because he's a supporter of the project, became a mark. They approached him to be their brand person or their front person or their Schiller person or whatever. They approached him for that. Like a mark, he fell into it, and then he went off and decided to build that up, or the team built it, but why would they put his face on there? It doesn't make any sense. And the reason I called Shaman King is because at a point, Shaman King was discussing from what I saw, getting on what would be Side of Mask as one of the, because a lot of these projects were trying to get on there, the Suzuki's and whatever. So I'm connecting it that Faltron being involved, apparently, keyword, with Shaman King, and then later with Cytochain and whatever that Stacks the God nonsense, and allegedly Stacks the God is associated with Faltron, and that being the reason that Cytochain chose not to go with whatever that project was. I'm simply making the case that these marks, Faltron being one, but only one, these marks are like buzzards floating around the Saitama project that always have been there. And because they're there, the project can never succeed because they put a negative light on the project. Even if they have the best of intentions in what they do, they're just negative energy, right? As negative energy around it, it's never going to succeed. The project never goes, these projects never go around the people that are going to help them because the projects know that they're grifts. And grifts go after grifters. That's what it is. When Faltron was arguing with Shinja and Shivnobi, Faltron wasn't wrong in what he was saying to Cliff Idiot over there. So I gave him that kudos. He's not wrong, but he's tinfoil, and he came across it like he's the boss. It is factually true that as an investor, they have to listen to you. You're their boss. It's just that it's everybody, not you, the one person. That's my beef with Faltron. He tries to take it like he's the singular boss on that stuff. But then when he's called out, it's like, this is your selfie, dude. Come on. He's ducking the smoke. What I want from all of them, all of the various ones that fell for grifts, because that's what happened. Faltron fell for grifts. Bleaves fell for grifts. He fell for grifts. Zach Humphreys fell for grifts. Austin Hilton fell for grifts. I mean, geez, Adam Captain, don't get me started there. Crypto Queen falls for grifts. Bleaves falls for grifts. Jake again, don't get me started there. I mean, they all fall for the grift. They fell for multiple grifts. So we knew this. And it's harmed, in some cases, their reputations on YouTube because a lot of their follower accounts came from Saitama. And then when they fall for grifts, because at the time, ends a little bit later, but at the time, grifts start showing up. And the grifts, because they're grifts, see, and they go after grifters. So they look for those marks who are easy prey, right? And they go after them and say, hey, Shield and Hyper Project, and we'll pay you. Like Jake again had a thing that I called out with Para Inu, where allegedly he had charged them $15,000 to do a promotional for Para Inu. And it was right on the site because Para Inu had a spreadsheet with all their expenses. And we knew that the only shiller they'd gone after was Jake again at the time. So I connected the dots. Okay, well, Jake's going after multiple projects. What we don't think that Saitama paid Jake, but maybe they did. Don't know. I'm saying that all of these different people that are the personalities that you now are familiar with that came or originated or became famous off of the Saitama name, they fell for the grifts and became grifters without trying to. Not all of them try to. Like Enoch, he certainly doesn't try to be a grifter, but the problem is he falls for these grifts and it makes him a grifter. He becomes the fall guy. That's why I call them marks. That's the problem. So like Bleaves, the question came in, was he paid? I don't think he was by Saitama. I think Saitama couldn't stand him, but I also don't think he was paid by Terrarium, and I don't think he was paid by Lilium. But Bleaves is one good example where I think what happens is these grifts, they see a mark. They see easy prey. They see that, okay, you're willing to cover these garbage ones. Because remember, he had Pongo, he had Bing X, he had Mexi, that he was all about Ben. He has all these ones where he's all in it, and there's not really anything I can see that warrants this, but he had lost his job. He's now all in as a YouTuber as a source of money. Well, that creates a source of desperation because you've got to, keep the bills, keep the lights on. He said that himself. So I'm not taking him out his turn. He said that. Okay, but now that makes you vulnerable because these projects, they're going to see, you just said online, you're desperate for some money. So, okay, we'll just grade up a garbage something. We'll sell you the narrative, and then we'll toss you a little bit of change, and you become the fall guy. Because a lot of people come back after Bleaves. Now, he's a big guy. He can take it. I'm saying that from a reputation perspective, nobody really wants that. I wouldn't. But all of the ones online, that's what I believe is happening. Like, I honestly don't think that the vast majority, not all, but the vast majority of them are malicious or trying to rip you off. I think what's happening is they're just as vulnerable as anybody else in the projects because they just happen to be personalities. They're in the front of it. on the front lines. And so somebody sees, okay, you're willing to promote garbage over there. Okay, fine. I'll come with my garbage, toss you a little bit of a pittance and have you promote my stuff. And then boom, I'm off with the money. Right. And that just keeps happening. So there was a time, and I called it out. There was a time when he was a lot more studious about the projects. I was really mystified in his fervent support of terrarium. That surprised me because the moment I saw that paper that said, we can't guarantee no liquidity on you or nothing, I was like, yeah, okay, done. Yeah, deuces. There's no way it's legit. Because it didn't matter. Like, he made the case that, well, they're doctors. They can just go up to the practice. Sure, but, that they also have a lot of money to, invest in not being found, right? So I didn't see it, but he was absolutely on it, absolutely on that one. And when the thing happened with terrarium, and I think he made some excuses about, Milton just got pissed off because of whatever. I don't think that's what happened. I think what happened is you had a bunch of people didn't know what they were doing. And because they didn't know what they were doing, it created a risk. Well, that means to me, it wasn't worth investing in because they would make those same mistakes with your money, right? Does that make sense? So I didn't understand it, but that was his thing. The Lilly thing, the Lilly initial with the jacked up launch, which was liquidity related. And I was told that Del Rug Pull, aka Del Crypto, was involved in that business. I couldn't prove it, but I was told that he was the one. What the story going around that there was a live somewhere and they accidentally showed the contract address up on screen. Somebody noticed it. They grabbed it. They went and they were sitting with an automated something ready to buy the moment it launched so that they were able to get in before anybody else. Because when you do it through a bot and you do it through the back end through the contract, you're faster than the UI, the front end that you would go through. So that was the story I was told, is that somebody did do it. And I even called out on a video that, yes, that was likely to be the case, that somebody was able to do this and front run it, essentially. The same thing I theorized could have happened with Strange Emu, because Strange Emu had a similar thing happen. Leaves admitted that one is a rug pull. He took ownership for that one. He didn't take ownership for Terrarium. He didn't take ownership for Lilly. He didn't take ownership for Ben. By ownership, I mean the fact that you told people you should get in this. Basically, you trapped them without really meaning to, but that's take ownership. You did it over on Strange. Why not on these? Because these were much worse than Strange, in my opinion. Because at least with Strange, not a lot of people got in it. It wasn't around long enough to make significant damage. But geez, Terrarium was around forever, relatively forever, where a lot of people got in, presumably because of your coverage. Same with Lilly Finance, same with Ben Token. So I was looking, and Pongo. So I was looking for more ownership from him around the stuff he was in. He chose not to do it. That's his prerogative. It's his channel. It's not, I'm not his parent or anything. So he can do what he wants to do. But I am saying that I feel like those projects, knowing they were going to be grifts at some point, chose to go after him because they saw that he's over trusting. He's easy. He's Mark. They saw him as a Mark. He's easy to catch and he's easy to trick and he's easy to trap and he's easy to convince, and he'll just take money, okay, I can just toss you a little bit of money and you'll lay down in the bed with me, kind of, they saw him that way. And so they exploited that because he verbally put that out there. That's what I believe happened there. The other question came around Cult Leader and how it was possible all this went unseen with Cult Leader. Like Cult Leader himself, it wasn't, right? You watched the guy, nothing he said made any sense. He was a smooth talker. That's all he was. But nothing he said made any sense. Blatant lie after blatant lie that could be disproven by blockchain, a lot of the stuff that he was talking about. And then you have to also look at the flags. And Manny, the rug puller, was the same way. Anytime some of them respond with smarmy responses, right? That's a flag. That's a red flag. I'll give you a good example. I did an interview with the CEO of HODL Token. HODL Token was around back during this time. And the current CEO, he had taken over from the previous team, and he was committed to making it succeed. And he said, yeah, I want to smoke. Let's go on the show. And I chatted with him. And he had a couple things, and they had a vision. They had a thing that they were doing, and they're still around. The response, the way that people respond tells you what their intent is. The CEO of HODL Token at no point was smarmy. He was not arrogant. He was nothing. He was receptive to everything I was suggesting. It's just they had a vision, no problem. Same thing with ETH Jets, and ETH Jets had some problems, major problems. The problems were not due to anything other than you have a lofty vision, you think it'll work. And he told me when I talked to Nick, he told me this is what we're planning to do. This is what we think we should be able to do. And we don't see a reason that we can't. And then they start involving legal and everything else. And it's a whole different ball game. And so now that the team shifted, it's in turmoil. But he was never smarmy. He was never rude. He was never nothing. It was just, we have a lofty vision. We think we can pull it off and we're going to try. And there's things they could have done better in hind, but things I couldn't have even predicted would have hit them. Like I wouldn't have thought some of the stuff were problems. But with the Saitama team, those two in particular, Manny the rug puller, Russ cult leader, there was a smarminess to their responses. There was a defensiveness every time. There was a Chewbacca-ness to everything that they were doing, which was red flag, and nobody fell for it because they're listening for the greed to come out of the voice. Yeah, we're trying to take your money. No, that's not how real criminals work. Good criminals are going to try to sneak it. They're going to try to be nice to your face and stab you in the back. That's how it works. And that was the sense I got, at least from them. I couldn't stand listening to either one of them. And then you get these marks that buzzard around it, and they make it worse because they're just like the cult leader and they're just arguing back and forth. Well, normal people don't want to hear a bunch of people arguing about a project where your money's involved. That's why the thing started tanking even after they launched the Cytomask and you couldn't, or Cytopro later, even after you couldn't sustain because you've already turned people off by the way you're acting. So let's take the November 13th. Let's assume that they had yanked the rotation from Times Square and they said, coming soon. Not that it's going to be available at the event, but coming soon. So they told Times Square it's coming soon. They went online, and I'm talking on their website, and they said, we want to make sure we get this right. So we're not going to have it at the event, but you're welcome to come out and hang out with us. You'll get to meet the team, talk to us, figure out what we're doing. So you just course correct ever slightly. Again, I said marketing is a science, so one of my things. If they had done that, right, and then they involved people with the actual development. So what I'm saying is that instead of hiring Jake Gain to film the event and get drunk, how about you contact people that are locals in Nevada who understand the laws, who understand the shooting, who understand the regs, who understand how to film properly, who understand how to do these things, who are going to be neutral in coverage. How about you engage with developers in the community? Because I know you had some. Teddy Ganja was one that talked out. How about you actually show an intent to make a product? Because even if they were doing the pump behind the scenes, which I'm not defending it. I'm saying even if you were doing this, you still could have produced something. And by producing something, you increase sentiment. Then you acknowledge, okay, it was a long road to get here. This is what we did to get your interest. We had to do something to get your interest. Now we got to earn that, right? We have to deliver something. We have to deliver a product. We can't just go off of that chill pump. At that point, you stop. You stop doing whatever it was that you were using to pump, and you use delivery of product to take you over the finish line. I think if they had done that and not done side of realty, not done side of card, I think it would have been sustained. I think it would have held. I think it would have been solid. But you have to understand these are greedy people. These are clearly greedy people that couldn't let go. Once they got in it, they couldn't let it go. And so here we are. The last question I got was around terrarium itself and what did the doctors know something where the doctors inside? I don't think so. I don't believe the doctors knew anything was going on. I don't think the doctors knew that the pump stuff was happening. I think the doctors were simply attracted to the project initially when the pumps, fake pumps. I think they dumped in as whales. I know they said open online, we don't like what's happening with this cult mentality and everything in the FOMO. And then they spun off and dumped out and went to do their own thing with terrarium. And then the cult of Saitama attacked them. I know that much is true. What I don't know, and I'm not sure, is why they felt like creating their own project the way that they did was the right answer. I don't have that answer, because if I were, let's assume that they wanted to get into something, right? I would have just created a non-crypto business, same name, terrarium, non-crypto, just a straight up business named terrarium. I would have said, we're going to focus on these products and services as terrarium. And later we're going to build a crypto exchange. So I would have started with the business, the front, the staff, the everything. Then I would have said, let's create a cryptocurrency exchange, which one thing they talked about, but they did, I think it was Huobi or something. And I don't mind that, but I'm saying, start with a non-crypto business and then tiptoe into crypto. See, that's the flaw I see of a lot of these grifters and marks. They just want to jump straight crypto first and then use that money to do legit business. No, you do business first, legit business, fiat business, and then use that to tiptoe into cryptocurrency at pieces. That's going to be the more successful, because at that point, you can't say that the money, the enrichment came from crypto. You're doing crypto as kind of an afterthought. That's why I'm really kind of excited, or I was, about when Radio Shack got rebranded and then they did a crypto something, because it was already a known business, right? There was no enrichment. And the Sony thing is a little bit intriguing. I just think they're going to screw it up. I'm saying that, to me, Terrarium could have been a thing if they had just legit business first. Let's create the front end. Let's build what it's going to do, and then tiptoe into cryptocurrency. But they were marks, and they were grifters at the end of it, but they were marks for themselves because they were enticed by the money and the profit potential, especially Milton. And that's what I think it was. I don't think they paid Bleaves. I think it was just, again, they saw Bleaves was vulnerable, and they decided to make friends with him because they knew that they could use him to support the grift. That's what I think happened there. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And again, it's based on my experience of what I saw at the time. And multiple people came out and said, no, this is what I recall was happening at the time, because it was obvious, some of these. That said, I was not sitting in telescams. There's a lot of stuff that was likely surfaced in the telescam that I was not privy to, because unfortunately, the Twitter spaces, the telescams, and all those, certainly the Twitter spaces, was nothing but a bunch of children arguing. I don't have time for that. I have legitimate business where I make legitimate money. I don't have time for that nonsense. So everything I see is based on public available information. Others may have other information that they can share. I can just say the vast majority of the people that I saw that were involved at the time, they're just marks. They fell for the grifts, not just Saitama, but various grifts. There were grifts all over the place at the time in 2021. People remember there's all sorts of grifting projects. That's what they were, but they were telling you one main thing: hold. Hold is the biggest scam, has been the biggest scam. You've heard me talk about it. If you listen for a while, you've heard me talk about that it's the biggest scam, because at the end of the day, you're not making any money if you just hold. You're just enriching somebody else. If you're fine doing that, then that's fine, but it's the worst thing you can do. Everything that we've got is meant to be traded. Volume is key, but also liquidity. All of these things require active trades. You cannot just sit and hold. Total value locked is a contributing positive, but that still assumes that there's positive transactions happening. And if you're just sitting, you're just a duck for duck hunt. That's what it is. So hopefully that's helpful, beneficial. I'm probably going to do something separate on Terrarium. I don't have all the inside details on Terrarium. I have enough to be dangerous. It'll be a short episode, maybe this weekend, maybe. Weekend seems best for me to distill all the garbage that is. Lily Finance, I've done coverage over time on Lily, and I think I've kind of covered the vast majority of what I knew. The only piece I'll probably do, and maybe I'll do that this week, is to just tie up the loose ends about what happened with Brad after the fact and the reason he's called out in this indictment, because it's connected to Saitama, but it's not. There's also a piece I'm going to do a follow-on out of cycle for Michael Thompson. It's not around Saitama, though. It's around the VZZN token. That's going to be a slim episode because there's not a lot to it. Understand that there's two parts to this whole fiasco. There's the criminal case stuff, and that's the Saitama team largely. There's also the financial pieces. That's where you get into the Brad Beatties and the VZZN, Michael Thompsons, and Aaron Mansour's. So it's hard to decouple the two because they joined them as a joint effort. And there was actually an operation they associated to it, so that's cool. And it started to spread over routers and everything else. So I'm intrigued and fascinated by everything I saw, and I think it warrants covering the Lily fallout, just brief one. The Terrarium fallout, just brief one. I'm surprised Terrarium wasn't called out in a financial one. I think the reason they didn't is because of where they were based out of. That's my theory. So keep an ear out for that one. Meanwhile, I'm still taking a victory lap on Hachi because, I can't have called it any better than what I did. Give my credit.